Name is Andy Palermo, sitting here at P.O.P.S, otherwise known as Palermo's Original Pasta and Sandwiches. When we thought about putting this restaurant together, this concept, it's quite unique in the sense of trying to marry really well done Italian house-made pasta with a really casual atmosphere, kind of ordering at the counter and keeping it super casual. The different pasta shapes that we make here are really interesting and fun. We just thought we'd kind of choose some that are a little bit, outside the norm, I guess I'd say. We make the bucatini, the spaghetti carbonara, we make mafalde, pacari. We make this little one called gnocchi sardi, which is looks like gnocchi, and in fact, it's representative of potato gnocchi, but it's Sardinian, which means it's done with the semolina pasta dough. The machine that we use, it's a pasta extruder. It's kind of this industrial size machine, and really it's the same dough, it's the same recipe for each pasta shape. The water and semolina flour go into the hopper of our pasta extruder, and it mixes and mixes and mixes, and it develops the gluten, and it becomes sort of a ball of dough, and it forces it through these little dies, and they just have little shapes in them, and then we kind of cut it as it goes and keep it super fresh like that. All right, so non-negotiables for a good pasta dish: the right shape, the right flavor profile, simple, fresh, and delicious. For example, so we make a dish called the zozona, which actually is an authentic Italian Roman recipe. Kind of think like marinara meets carbonara. We've married that dish with our homemade pacari, which are kind of like these like little tubes, but they're kind of a little thicker than like like a rigatoni or something like that. And so they have this really nice texture to them, and they hold on to the sauce incredibly well. We top the dish with a fried egg just because that's kind of how we style it out. But we build every single dish individually to order. And so we have to kind of think through, how's the shape, affect the overall presentation, the sauce, how's it going to hold on and sort of glaze everything up? And, can it be built in sort of layers of flavor? Another really great example is our chicken parm. Our chicken parm is served over a bed of that bucatini pasta, which is kind of glazed up with a little bit of like a roasted garlic puree. So not real saucy or anything like that, but you've got this pasta that's kind of, sweet and garlicky at the same time. A nice piece of fried chicken on the top of that with that panko and herb crust. And then a little bit of the red sauce, cheese, and then we finish it off with this infused herb oil. And so the concept and the idea is building layers, and so you get kind of that perfect bite. And so we really think about how the dish can be prepared individually with layers kind of built into it. So, a little bit of acid. Does it need some white wine? Does it need a pinch of salt? Are you getting some sweetness from roasted vegetables? And does that play well with, whatever else you got going on with the dish? And so some of those non-negotiables to think about would be, how we're building the layers of flavor and choosing the right shape for the right sauce. And so initially it was actually going to be Palermo's original pasta shop, but we fell in love with this space. We fell in love with this building. We fell in love with the opportunity here in downtown Canton in the Jones building. And we knew immediately that there would be a big opportunity for lunch business. And so we kind of changed the shop at the end of Pops to sandwiches, knowing that we wanted to kind of be a place that people thought about for, a nice, quick, delicious lunch. And so Palermo's original pasta and sandwiches. It's also kind of a nod to my dad. I always called him Pops growing up. The family photographs up here in the corner, that's obviously my wife, kids, and it's so endearing being able to see Agnes and Augustine, participate, and the way they interact with people, and just the way the community kind of embraces them too. The most rewarding time I've ever spent in a restaurant was doing it together as a family. The middle photograph at the top is my folks. That was them on their wedding night, I think it was. They were at Mama Leone's in New York City. And so we drew a little bit of the inspiration for the atmosphere, the vibe of the restaurant, a little bit from that photograph itself, but just that era, New York City, kind of mid-century. And so, yeah, the name Pops means a lot to us. The menu development process really starts with one of our expressions, simple, fresh, and delicious. Really getting some good ingredients, treating them simply, not overcomplicating it, and then making it something that we can make fresh, easily, quickly. When we set out to do this, it was Italian American. And so some of those classics come first. Things like the chicken parms, spaghetti meatballs, meatball sandwiches. Those things will be staples on our menu, hopefully forever. But we do try to keep things a little more seasonal as well. So, seasonal flavors, seasonal type dishes, seasonal ingredients. But there's also an element of, does it fit well? Does it work well for this model of a restaurant? And does it represent what we're really going for? When I always thought about opening a restaurant, I always kind of knew it would tilt towards more of that New York inspired Italian American food. I grew up in Connecticut, and so heavy influence of Italian American culture there, kind of the tri-state area, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. Although I think we follow the Italian ethos, which is, you know, simple, fresh, delicious food that's not overcomplicated, just using, great ingredients. It's just the food I grew up on. That's the food I love to eat. The Italian food is kind of comfort food for me. That's kind of home base. When we talked about opening a restaurant, the phrase that we kept saying over and over was like a great local neighborhood gem kind of restaurant. And the space here in this building was just perfect. Another thing that I really love about being down here, the historic nature of this Jones building, it's really cool to sort of hear some of the stories of folks that have like lived their entire lives here. And it makes me think about, who knows, maybe in 50 or 100 years, people will be like, I used to get the best meatball sandwich in this space, And so that part's been really cool too. There's something really charming about this town and something especially charming about this building, and even more so this corner spot, these windows, the Canton Theater right next to us. Like it's everything we could have dreamed of and more. The thought of the name of our restaurant on the side of this building was just like one of the coolest things that we could ever imagine. And the fact that that's become a reality is so special.